afternoon. This afternoon we will be dealing with printmaking. The practice of printing as an art form has evolved into a universal discipline of what is now called printmaking. Printmaking owes its roots from as far back as the prehistoric practice of cavemen, as they used their hands as stencils to depict tales of their lifestyle of hunting and agriculture. And the cave murals in Loscu and Altamira show us early human artistry and philosophy. Then, with the invention of paper, printing became the greatest thing, and soon became a craft and an art form. So this unique art form involves the transfer of images from a printing matrix. Transfer of image from a printing matrix onto another surface provides both the artist and the viewer a distinct visual experience that is totally out of this world in terms of visual qualities. Such is Rembrandt's intaglios or etchings, Katie Coleridge's woodcuts, Redon's lithograph, Andy Warhol's screen prints. Every work possesses a certain characteristic not present in their works done in painting or other mediums. Such impressions are derived not solely from the artist's intent, but as an effect of the use of the technique as the artist responds to and interacts with the medium. Printmaking broadens the possibilities of image making, and as a result, astounds not only the viewer, but the artist himself. And a print, small as it may be, beckons and lures from a distance. And as one approaches the artwork, the print, you and the print create an intimacy. Then you are brought to a vast space beyond the frames and transported to a remote reality. Every fine line in an etching, every stroke of a lithocrayon, every cutting stroke in a woodcut, the gradating tones of the grains of aquatint, the boldness and directness of a rubber cut, the silvery tones in an engraving. All these things figure in the work and make up what stimulates the mind. Let's have the Babylonian. So you have seen the one of Altamira, and these were the hands sprayed. So that was the first form of printmaking. Then the Babylonians came, and they have this ring that you can roll onto clay, and it would give you those bas-relief kind of effect. This one is a Babylonian rolled intaglio, and it talks about the apocalypse of what would happen in the future. And then the next is the Sumerian hieroglyphics. In the Philippines, one of the earliest form of print came from the Jesuit Pilar de Murillo, done in 1800s. It's a map of the archipelago And as national artist Nick Joaquin, he considers it as one of the 12 important events in Philippine history. The adornments, or what you call the cartouche on the side, it was done by the engraver Nicolas de la Cruz Bagay. And if you are well aware of the Philippines' claim to the South Philippine Seas, this was one of the documents that was presented in the international court to say that that thing belongs to us. And this is a kind of a land title. And it was an engraver who made it with the help of the Jesuits. And this was used by Ambassador de la Cruz, Del Rosario, sorry, and as an evidence that that is ours. The next is What is a Woodcut? This is a print by Baskin. I think it's there in the exhibit. And it discusses the relief technique. This is a technique wherein you cut out the surface, and what is left is rolled with an ink and then printed. It also is similar to a rubber stamp, what we know as rubber stamp, and lino cut. Next is the silk screen, lithograph. The lithograph is printmaking using limestone. The process is the use of the antipathy of oil and water. And what is wet will not accept the ink, and what is dry or greasy is what will absorb the ink. Let me talk to you about the Ateneo Art Gallery print collection. In 1962 or 1963, I was an active member of the Ateneo Arts Club. Then it was headed by Fernando Cialcita and Louis Acosta. And it was also during this time that I got to meet and befriend Emmanuel Eric Torres. He was a professor and the curator of the Ateneo Art Gallery. We viewed exhibits and attended lectures by Lee Aguinaldo, Fernando Sobel, Arturo Luz, and Jose Hoya. We also saw at the U.S. Embassy projection room a film about American printmakers. It was in this film that I saw for the first time images of etchings by Mauricio Lasonsky, Gabor Katerdi, and Warden Day, to name a few. And then, Ateneo Art Gallery had already a sizable collection of fine prints by Bernard Childs, Kumi Sugay, Picasso, Dali, Basquiat, and Anthony Frasconi, and a complete set of the Disasters of War aquatint etchings by Goya. Of course, they also had Rembrandt's Descent from the Cross, a very famous etching. And it was the exposure to all this that got me attracted to the graphic arts. I would later narrow down my search for a visual art medium, and that led me to more printmaking methods. When the Ateneo Art Gallery transferred to the Rizal Library, I remember writing down this. The print collection now is in a much larger space. This collection is what has inspired me to continue as a printmaker in the early 1960s. I always ask myself during this time the question, am I prepared to dedicate the rest of my life to an idea for which I will probably receive no material compensation for at least 20 years? So that was what I asked myself. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be a printmaker, I will have to have a committed decision. And for me, a committed decision is when you do it regardless. So this bulk of collection, the print collection, came from Don Fernando Sobel's collection and showed his taste, his personal taste in art. And since he was so much a pen and ink person and into calligraphy, he was collecting prints that impressed him the most because of its calligraphic quality. The collection contains art bigwigs like Rembrandt, Goya, and Picasso. The collection also contained fine prints of various techniques. In a nutshell, it is an entire lesson in the history of printmaking, and more so now. The collection has slowly grown and expanded through the years, and this show will be divided into groups to simplify the medium and to be viewer-friendly. The prints or artworks are to be viewed continuously and leisurely. I would like to share with you now some trivia. And my first experience with printmaking began in the summer of 1963. I started with woodcuts and rubber cuts, and gradually was introduced to Manuel Rodriguez Sr. He is considered the father of printmaking. I began experimenting with lithographs on stone first, and then gradually it was etching on zinc and copper that I was particularly attracted to. This particular process is called intaglio. It is a method wherein the grooves and the crevices engrave and scrape or etch into a plate is inked, and you use an etching press to print it. It is the opposite of woodcut. In my apprenticeship stage, it was evident that Mang Maning Rodriguez was my print guru, having met no one then who would have given me instructions on intaglio prints. I would often visit then the Ateneo Art Gallery to view and analyze prints by Eugene Delacroix, Goya, Rembrandt, Hogarth, and modern artists like Hans Hartung, Bernard Childs, Picasso. And aside from the foreign artists, Ateneo also had prints by Filipino artists like Arturo Luz, Vicente Manansala, and Hoya. A book on printmaking authored by Gabor Paterbi became my Bible. It was a gift from Eric Torres. In 1969, I left for Europe to participate in the Paris Biennale and to study art in Madrid. As a fine art student, I worked with two other workshops in Madrid. That's a picture of me with Ben Cab and Mrs. Sobel. That's in front of a gallery in Cuenca. As a fine art student, I worked with two other workshops in Madrid. The one at Bellas Artes in San Fernando was then, and still for me, an awesome place to study intaglio printmaking, because it has real etchings and engravings of master printmakers of the 17th and 18th century permanently displayed along its walls. And then the Escuela de Artes Oficios had also a remarkable workshop. And we had two of Spain's top engraver helping us. This was the brother Sanchez Toda. In Madrid, aside from working in the shop or taller of Dimitri Papageorgiou, a Greek lithographer, I was also introduced to a very famous printmaker in Spain. His name is Antonio Lorenzo. This is a page from a thesis about Grupo 15. Grupo 15 was an edition house doing prints, publishing prints in 1973. I was one of the first edition printers they got, and I pulled editions of intaglio prints for Eusebio Sanpere, Manolo Millares, Amadeo Gabino, Lucio Munoz, to name a few. It became taxing and boring for a while. Then finally, Don Antonio Lorenzo took me as his personal printer until I transferred to Paris to learn more about French printmaking. I stayed in Paris from 1973 to 1976, and in this moment I briefly met Stanley William Hayter of the famous Atelier Dizet. Ofi Teki was a neighbor, and we were staying in the 6th arrondissement. I eventually ended up printing colographs in an edition house called Edition Empreinte. It was also a printmaker's meeting place, nicely located on the 4th district of Paris. In 1976, I decided to go back. Then we were called Balikbayans. And as soon as I got back, the first thing I did was to see Mang Maning, and I shared with him my experiences as a printmaker and my journey in learning printmaking. Immediately, I was hired as a printmaking instructor in UP, and I had several workshops in UP Baguio. It was here where I met Mike Parsons. We would eventually set up a print workshop in Baguio and a papermaking workshop. In 1989, I was represented to join the print adventure in Japan, in Fukuoka. The outcome of this, the portfolio of prints, is now with the Ateneo Art Gallery print collection. In 1990, the organization of art groups, this was right after the People Power Revolution. There was a reorganization of art groups, and the printmakers group was activated. This was also the time I became the director of the visual arts at CCP. And during that time, the French embassy gifted CCP with scholarship and litho equipment. And a new space at the back of the Folk Arts Theater opened. It was a very auspicious time. It opened a new chapter in the annals of the printmakers group. In the year 2000 and the following years, the printmakers were becoming known as the most active art group in the country, and eventually became a recipient of an award from NCCA. Printmaking, for a lot of artists and student artists, is a road less traveled by, and yet it's the one that made a big difference in the lives of many artists who chose it over other well-known mediums. The word closest to what I experienced as a printmaker and following printmaking as a goal. In Zen Buddhism, this is called Satori. Satori means a way or a road to a sudden enlightenment or realization. Truly, it is when I'm either printing, editioning, or pulling proofs that I get sudden flashes of insights. One of the printmakers I admire most is William Blake. Not only was he a consummate printmaker, he was also a famous poet. In doing etchings or intaglios or woodcuts, I am always reminded of his poem. And the poem, which is entitled The Auguries of Innocence, begins with, open quote, "To see the world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wild flower. Hold eternity in the palm of your hand, and infinity in an hour." Close quote. Today we are on the cutting edge of postmodern printmaking. More than 50 years has passed and printmaking is alive and well in our country. Also, printmakers have been interacting with their Asian counterparts and are connected through internet. A number of international workshops have been conducted by visiting master printers. These are from countries like the United States, Australia, Finland, Thailand, and India. This certainly means that fine printmaking is alive and well and is more dynamic as we have never seen before. So this exhibit, Printed, which will open shortly. In this exhibit, we hope that it will inspire a new breed of printmakers and young collectors who will continue to make printmaking a major art medium. In closing, I would like to thank my team who helped me curate, and Boots, our chief curator, and Ateneo. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. If you have any questions about printmaking in general, you can ask me. Or my career as a printmaker.
What is like the cost to make one print?
What is the cost of making one print? It depends. For the cheapest would be a holograph, because all you need is paper, put the collage, and then buy some ink and a roller, paper. And then, well, the most expensive would be etching or engraving. But then you will have to go to a workshop so that it will be less expensive.
Pandy, siguro you can explain why it's important to have workshop for among printmakers.
Yeah.
For this particular
They say that printmaking is the gateway medium when you go to a print workshop and go into prints, you are also in a way learning about painting, sculpture, and you would need the help of other artists to help you. That's why in a printmaking workshop, you learn what it is to be in a team. The nice thing about prints is that you begin to realize the difference between an individual and a collective. What I mean is that you as an individual working, or you as a team in which you become a collective. That means 5 people become 1 person. And when you realize that there is a difference between the individual and the collective, you will realize also that when you say an Adam or an Eve, it is a collective. It is not just 1 person. When you talk about divinity or God, it is not just 1 person. It's a big collective of everything. So in the experience you get in a workshop, not only develops the fellowship among artists, it also gives you an insight into the role of an individual and a collective archetypal person. Unlike in painting, you can paint by yourself. That's why also in workshops there is less jealousy. Unlike in painting studio, you're always aware of the other person trying to copy you or doing better than you. Unlike in a workshop wherein it's teamwork, if you made a very good print, everybody's happy. And then you share your technique with others. Unlike in a painting workshop wherein there's a tendency to be secretive about your technique.
My question has to do with having been exposed to the many methods for which to create print. What's the wildest example of a print work that you've seen in contemporary practice in the postmodern era that you mentioned? So, is it still print? Something like that?
I've seen a lot of hybrid prints in contemporary printmaking. Some of these prints have gone outside of the box, meaning they are installations. One of the artists that has been doing installation is Aviado, and she's doing larger than life figures in woodcuts, and she prints them, and then aside from printing, the block itself become the sculpture, the same way as Benji Cabrera does the engraving, and the plates itself has become the art form, aside from being the matrix for printing. So and then there are others who do installations of prints. I've seen one, a tree, a branch of a tree, and then he made an edition of 100 of leaves, and these leaves he pasted on the tree, and some of them dropped. So that here you have the edition of 100, and their leaves printed from one plate. And it now goes beyond what we normally think of a print. So that's one of those things that I've seen. There's also an exhibit in, I think it was in the late 60s. It's called Edition Alecto. There is an artwork, a clay or a plaster thing made by Nicky San Paul. And what you have to do is to fire pellets in the sculpture, and colors will come out. And there's an edition of, I think, 12 of this. But you have to go and shoot the sculpture and see the color. Yes, anymore. Aren't you going to ask me what my favorite print here in this exhibit? This art collection actually, this is just the tip. This is the, for me, the cream of the crop. These are the prints that I've selected because more or less they are the ones that have inspired me. Some of the early ones like Baskin and Frasconi. And then, of course, the Sanso prints, which I've done, which some of them I've printed, personally printed. And I was explaining to some students how when I touch the plate of Sanso, it sort of projects me to the time when he was doing those prints, those etchings. And this was in the 1960s, during the student revolution in Paris, where the student tried to topple down de Gaulle. And it was very chaotic. In Paris, it's really anarchy. And, throughout what was happening, the crisis, Sanso was trying to do his etchings. And I remember him telling me that he would, during the turmoil, because the class was in the 6th arrondissement, or the 4th or the 5th. And on the next street is Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and that was really chaotic. And a lot of students would go back to this class. They would make some Molotov cocktail. And while all this, Sanso was doing his prints. And the thing was that some of the things that you use in the Molotov cocktail is there in the workshop. The nitric acid, the sulfuric acid, he would place in the bottles of wine, and he would throw. So every time I would sort of touch the plate, I would be projected in that era, and I would feel the excitement that Sanso felt. He was also in one of the stories that he has been telling us that often he would defend the lady printmakers there, and he would get his copper plate and he would try to fend off the, those sex offenders in the workshop. So that's one of the nice things about the workshop also, is that you move as a team. So the things that we have selected there are just, for us to appreciate prints, but clearly there's more works in your archives. Yeah.
Sorry.
And it will take many, many years to look at them one by one. But like I said, when you begin to appreciate prints, there is a special bonding between you and the print, and there's an intimacy, especially when you see Rembrandt, up close, and then you channel the energy of Rembrandt, and when you look at it, you say, you're in the print itself. You become transported into that scene. Anything else? Yes? Ikaw na naman ulit. Ayaw na. Yeah. Tatanong siya.
Hi, sir. Well, when you were working with us, one of the things you told us about is your relation of printmaking with like courtship and romance. Can you tell us about that?
Did I say that? Courtship?
Along those lines.
I said intimacy. Well, you might metaphorically speaking, yeah, it is. Because when I first was introduced into printmaking, the first thing I did was a lithograph, and I call that romancing the stone because of the stone. And it was an adventure. It could be a romantic adventure, maybe also in a way. I guess that's it.